Blue Flash, Blue Cloud. Okay.
Alan Mills.
We are. You can just turn the key off the show.
Hello.
Oh, I got this. Orders and things here. Good afternoon, Ms. Mills.
Hello.
Okay.
Should that be on a chair?
Well, yes, I would have had a little bit more time.
You want me to do
Please
it?
call this meeting to order. 1 o'clock. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Trustee Polly,
Present.
Trustee Lappin,
Here.
Clerk Palovich here, Treasurer Ellery Summers,
Here.
Trustee Kroll,
Here.
Trustee Reinhardt,
Currently absent.
Supervisor Skibby.
Present. Okay, at this point in time, is there any additions, corrections to the agenda? Seeing none,
I'll make that motion.
I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as
I'll make that
presented.
motion.
We have a motion, do we have support?
Support.
We have a motion and support on the table, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the agenda as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Agenda adopted. This is the first opportunity for public comment. If there's any public comment, please state your name for the record and limit yourself to 3 minutes. Is there anybody on the telephone with public comment? Again, is there anybody by telephone that has any public comment? Okay, moving forward to the purpose of the meeting. Ad hoc committee members, Trustee Kroll and Trustee Lappin. Really, I'll kind of start with you guys.
Take it away, sir. Okay. So we had one meeting Monday. I think it went pretty well. As a result of that meeting, the committee would like to see that we continue on with the hiring process. Based on that, that we at least offer potential candidates a letter of employment with the conditions, obviously, that they pass all background stuff, physicals, whatever's required of them. We're having another meeting tomorrow. We're hoping to keep it moving along. I think it's been pretty good so far. I had Dave has presented everybody with a firefighter job responsibility, and I see lieutenant captain. So there's a lot of stuff here in front of you. Maybe we can go through some of this. I think what the plan is we hire somebody, we bring them in as a firefighter at the base starting wage. And like I said, I think this committee is going to go from top to bottom through everything we have, labor agreements, all that. And try to present options to the board on a direction going forward. So we got a lot of work ahead of us in a short amount of time to do it. But everybody has come to the meetings, the meeting we've had, they're ready to go. We have added community members, Bev Banks and Chad Ash, then Lappin and myself, and Dave and Chris from the fire department. I think it's gonna work out well. Like I said, we got a lot of work, and we're looking forward to it. So, anything else, Steve?
Not really. We just talked about options, and those 4 options that we talked about were quickly whittled down to 1, really. Those 4 options were to discontinue any fire services or EMS services altogether, which is a bad option. One would be to submit or to consider nonprofit fire departments or a for-profit fire department. One was to consolidate, and then one was to operate our own system. And through the various conversations that we had, it was pretty clear that the ad hoc committee felt that now would be a good time to continue to operate our own fire department, with the understanding that we had a unique opportunity to essentially reorganize, for lack of a better phrase. I'm not suggesting that we reinvent the wheel, but that we take advantage of the opportunity to put procedures in place, job descriptions in place, hierarchies in place, et cetera, so that we can operate the facility in a more efficient manner. Or at least a consistent manner.
Okay. Chief?
Yeah, at this point, other than just, I feel a little bit redundant, but yeah, I feel the priorities are one. There seemed to be some concern about having, just because of the way the department has operated in the past, is getting these job descriptions corrected and or approved by the board, so we will have them official and on record from now on. And the other thing is to reiterate the urgency of continuing with the hiring process. And I think this having the job description certainly will help. I hope that puts you guys at ease, and then whatever discussion has to take place on making some contingent job offers to the 5 candidates that we currently have. But you know, I feel the meeting the other day was pretty productive. I was satisfied when we left out, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow morning. So
at this point in time, I guess I'll open the table for discussion from trustees, because I wholeheartedly agree that we do need to look at bringing in some help, because obviously we're grossly shorthanded. I guess I'll refer back to Lizzie on where do we stand, because I think from what I'm hearing is we have an opportunity to look at the structure and correct the structure. And part of that is a well-defined job description that we have before us, at least for firefighters, lieutenant, and captain. But what is said structure going to look like? Because that's, I guess, if there is a hesitation of just saying, you know, let's just offer this potential to 5 individuals, of which, like I said, all good people. One of those 5 had, from my standpoint, the ability to kind of transition better than the others, shall I say?
yeah, do you want me to give some input on that, or?
By all means,
Okay.
I think we need to have good conversation.
Yeah, my assessment of that is the one candidate, Mr. Willis, currently of the 5 is the only one that possesses all of the qualifications to move right into an officer position. Notwithstanding a probationary period and shaking him out and you know, seeing how he does. And but the other 4, I feel I'm in agreement with the board to a point where I think I'd be more comfortable hiring them as full-time firefighters and watching them through the probationary period, and then allowing them that chance to strive for the credentials to become a fire officer. And if and when that is completed at that point, then perhaps offer them a lieutenant spot. So what the department would look like, even if we were lucky enough to get all 5, what it would look like off the bat is myself, Christopher Stevens as a captain, the possibility of Willis being a lieutenant,
depending on his competencies. And then the other 4 is firefighters. There's one thing in there I want to point out, and if, in the absence of Mr. Golden and Reiner, is perhaps ask Helen, and that is I've been pushed back that the reasoning behind all the officers was to comply with Part 74.
Well, and actually, to that extent, Dave, to your right, we have Miss Mills, who's with us, that could probably address that question more efficiently than either.
That's why I say I would defer, and, Helen, my understanding of Part 74 is that it requires us to have personnel that are trained in incident command and operations. It doesn't necessarily specify they have to be an officer. That's the pushback I'm getting, is no, these guys you have to send an officer to every call. My intent in working with other departments and larger ones is Christopher, myself, and perhaps one other lieutenant would always be made available to fire calls, which is what it's aimed at. We don't need them on medical calls. So I would feel comfortable recommending that we perhaps could hire them as full-time firefighters as opposed to officers, give them the learning curve and their experience. And I just want to be sure that I'm not stepping outside of Part 74.
So I think your understanding is correct. The alternative view is that everybody in a full-time department needs to bear some version of an insignia other than firefighter if they're planning to act as IC on a scene and managing those on-call staff. So you see some full-time departments that will have, for instance, the lowest rank as sergeant for that very reason. But it is my experience that where there is other certainty of command officer availability and appearance on a scene, especially if you continue to collaborate with the surrounding communities to ensure that that's true and give yourself maybe a break on occasion, then we would be well satisfying those expectations. The trick is, what if that doesn't work? What if that promise that we're making to ourselves or the collaborative efforts of your surrounding communities fail? Are we then in a potential problem area? Yes. So it is a bit of a dice roll, but I agree with your perception as you described it to the board.
Thank you.
Yes, Michelle.
Currently, we had 6 officers. And I don't know, does our union contract require that everybody be an officer? So we could bring people in as firefighters?
Correct.
Okay.
That was my understanding.
And I think as we dig deeper in this thing, we may realize that we're going in a totally different direction or different structure. But like I said, it's gonna take a little bit of time to go through those things and see what works. Because, we may look at it financially and say, well, it looks good on paper, but no, that's not gonna work. Or we might say, we don't know where it's gonna lead us at this point.
Well, and if I can, I guess that's where I have a little hesitation and pause. I know the time and the necessity. I understand that, but part of me feels like we're rushing to bring on, potentially, from what I'm hearing, an opportunity to increase our staff by 5.
Probably unrealistic.
Well, and I tend to agree that you're probably not going to have 100% response,
Probably.
but under the guise that we do. We're jumping right into a scenario where we're looking to hire 5 people without any of the structure fixed in place. That's my dilemma.
Well, so we, I have provided to all of the ad hoc committee and to you as well, the sort of canned procedures manual that the insurance carrier has developed over the years. And so that's very comprehensive. And so some of the sections may apply, some may not, but it's quite literally a plug and play, just like the job descriptions are read it, if it applies, plug it in. If it doesn't, modify. And so I think from a realistic expectation, there may be 2, right? And then we just have to go back out and find some more. The probability of getting 5 people at one time is probably very low. We don't know that either of these two current candidates have the ability. Excuse me, not the ability, but have the, are still interested. They may or may not be. And so that's the struggle, I guess, that we have to deal with. But if we don't deal with it, then we just get further behind the 8 ball. And I think that's why there is such a expectation of speed in this process. Like I'd mentioned to the committee, if we call somebody who's interested and then within the next day or two or whatever, send out that letter of acceptance, then at least we have some opportunity to draft the letter in such a way that, in my personal opinion, they should be hired as a firefighter and not as an officer, because you can always go up, really hard to go back down. And so that would be my lean on it. But at the end of the day, we've got 2 people that are running something 24 hours a day, and they're going to burn out. And if they get too tired, then they start making mistakes. If they start making mistakes, then we have potential injuries and liabilities and all the other things that come with that.
Of which we're already seeing.
Exactly.
What do you mean by that, Supervisor?
Well, we just had one, by all means, Chief, because I was gonna come back because I just heard you mention that we would just make Mr. Stevens a captain.
So,
And I think this is a perfect time to discuss that.
yeah, assumption based on rotation, and I know you eschew the word past practice. We had a incident on the 26th where, we've just jumped from the VHF to the 800 megahertz system. Under the VHF, people have had years and years and years they've grown accustomed to 3 sets of tones going out for our department before responding and knowing who's responding and who isn't. When we switched to 800, that practice was stopped. More to the point, though, that it was that Lieutenant Stevens was on duty the night of the 26th, and our department was toned out for a possible stroke on Long Rapids Road just in near the city, and slept through the call. And my problem with reviewing that situation is I had not a failure on the part of one officer, but also a senior captain working south. It was incumbent upon him to wake up with the tones and make sure that Chris had backup. At that point in time, we were still required to send 2 people. And it was on him to ascertain whether Chris had responded and if any paid on calls. If they had, he could stay and man South Station. If not, he was to respond across town and assist Lieutenant. Neither one of them responded, so there's a 2-part failure right there. And one of my solutions to that problem too, though, was to contact the manager at Communications and ask him, would it be possible, knowing that we are a manned station 24/7 and there were no other calls out, if they drop a set of tones and no one responds in a reasonable amount of time, i.e. probably about 2 minutes, that they repeat the set of tones instead of just going, oh, nobody went. And it took 4 days for this to be brought to my attention. So, and not to belabor the point, but the end result of that, just so the board knows, is I did issue a written reprimand to Lieutenant Stevens for that, and I'm still debating what good it would do to put one in Captain Piper's file, being as that he's gone now, but it should be noted. And the only other caveat to that is, as we were talking about the exhaustion and stuff, Chris was on his last 12 hours of a 3-day shift, and said he was pretty much exhausted. He made no excuses. He did say it was totally on him, and he accepted anything that we thought was appropriate for the situation. And I think he felt worse than I did when he found out, but that doesn't excuse it, but that's what happened. And that addresses exactly what you guys were talking about, was working these anywhere from 2 to 4 and 5 days in a row, trying to fill these shifts at Southside, so.
Yeah, I mean, they go hand in hand. It is I think it's at least my concern of, you know, if to have a proper emergency response, we need employees that are ready to respond. And yeah, that gets into why we're here today, to have this discussion. Ms. Mills, at this point in time, do you have any input to give, or are you just kind of taking notes to where we get to more potential action?
I was taking good notes, as I'm sure Chief understands, but that's one I gotta make sure we have notes on for future reference. I do think you should drop something in Captain Piper's record, by the way, just for the sake of keeping it consistent. And I'm very sorry to hear that experience transpired in the township. From an action perspective at this point, and I think both trustees Kroll and Lappin mentioned this at the top, to me, the next step is you need to establish exactly what it is that you intend for these folks to be serving in if they are hired, and you need to establish that very soon. To speak to Chief's question, yes, it is appropriate for the board to review and approve ultimately whatever job descriptions are established, so I would urge great haste on the part of the committee, and perhaps yet another prompt special meeting of some kind to review and approve those so that you have them in hand. And as I think I have previously mentioned to this board and perhaps individual members of the board, once a new position is established, it is incumbent upon the employer to notify the bargaining unit, which right now is just Mr. Stevens, but we are obligated to notify him. And as we are intending to add to the bargaining unit, then you should continue recognizing him as a representative, even though it is a strange thing that he's a representative of one right now. His ability at that point is to seek negotiation for whatever wages and terms and conditions of employment would apply to this new position of firefighter or sergeant, if that's the direction that you go. I don't expect he will make much discussion about the rate being applied for these new firefighters. And I may have mentioned this to Trustee Kroll. I think the bigger question will be whether at this time he seeks some kind of an adjustment to the wages that he is receiving, given that he would be supervising others with a lower rate than him. So you should be advised of a potential ask in that regard. It's also, of course, entirely possible that Mr. Stevens will say, yes, let's do that for now, and then let's talk about long-term what this wage schedule looks like to recognize the rank structure in another capacity. So I don't know Mr. Stevens. I have not had the pleasure of meeting him at the bargaining table these past few years, so I defer to your collective experience, but that is something that you should be aware of. I can't imagine in the current state of affairs, and especially given what Chief Robbins just described, that he's going to hold up the hiring process over the wage and negotiation opportunity that he has, but it is something that is his.
Yes. To follow that up, Ms. Mills, and I think I've heard it through the ad hoc, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're also looking at basically taking some of the power plant, not recreating the wheel, but looking at the structure and its integrity moving forward.
Absolutely.
Now, in that capacity, how does the bargaining unit of one, what does that process look like? Because I don't want to jump right back into a scenario that historically brought us to this point. So what should we be considerate of moving forward?
So Helen, before you respond, one of the things that we talked about at the committee meeting was policies and procedures and having those in place. And there was no question that all members of that ad hoc committee were in favor of having something established. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I certainly didn't get the impression that Chris had any objection to having something formulated that set expectations and what I do, why I do it, and so on and so forth. And within that document that I'm talking about, the procedures, it establishes, it almost follows a little bit of the union contract relative to those sorts of personnel issues, but it also gets into the nuts and bolts of the day-to-day function of a fire department.
Trustee Foley?
These are new.
Those are just job descriptions, and those are the ones that the township apparently had created. Either Dana had created them or something was
Yes.
going on. The only thing that I don't know is whether or not these have been adopted.
They have not.
And so these are just words on a piece of paper then. And so I did not make a comparison between the job descriptions that we had sort of tentatively drafted and those that are within the packet that I had sent out. I suspect a lot of them will mimic one another.
My question, or I guess my point is, we didn't have job descriptions for this department before?
Correct.
All we had in place, let me say we, because it was actually even before my time, Trustee Poley, was there were job requirements set that were incumbent upon the new hires to have within a certain period of time. And again, just to remind the board, it wasn't that long ago that there were no lieutenants. Somebody could walk in cold off the street. If they were offered the position and took it, they were, very quickly then issued captain's bars and insignia and there was still a learning curve because they certainly held equal rank and to a finer point equal pay with the other captains, but again there was a probationary period they had to complete, and you certainly don't want to, even though most of them were paid on calls and had experience with the department, they really had no command experience. And they would be paired with a more senior captain and work under their tutelage for a period of time before they were off probation and turned loose, so to say. I understand why the department took that route back then. I don't necessarily condone it or agree with it, which is why 5 years ago, we instituted the policy of bringing the new hires in at the rank of lieutenant so that there was no question. They served under the supervision of the senior captain. So I would to this point again reiterate that this would be a good time to, I feel comfortable with Christopher's operations on scene, doing fire command and directing operations and attack and overhaul and everything. As much as I like these other 5 guys, I don't know them. I say we're going to have to see. So if I were to have to give you a recommendation, it would look like I stated before, and that would be officially move Chris into that captain slot, as that traditionally has not been so much a matter of rank and pay, but seniority. And then he and I would, the remaining 4, Mr. Willis aside, meeting the qualifications, I wouldn't be opposed to having a captain and a lieutenant. To address the question of having sergeants, again, just so that the board is aware, the department has had and held sergeant positions in the past. It will not be a new thing. The only reason I don't have sergeants right now is because as we instituted the hierarchy from chief to captain to lieutenant, we absorbed several of the people that were sergeants and made them lieutenants. So it worked like it was supposed to. They stepped up in rank, and they were looked to on fire scenes as our acronym on the fire scene was SMIC, stood for senior man in charge, but they were made sergeants, and the paid-on calls would look to them as kind of like they're one of our own. They're not full-time officers, but they are designated to, on the fire scene to command us. So we're not reinventing the wheel, we're not introducing anything new that the department's never had. They have had sergeants in the past, that we just ran low on manpower in the paid-on calls, and more specifically, the people that were willing to accomplish those things that were outlined, accomplishments to make them eligible to become sergeants. There are a lot of guys that were showing up at the scene that are just comfortable doing firefighting. They didn't want to do anything to do with command. Go ahead, Laura.
This is just my opinion, but however this ends up being created, if we have firefighters, sergeants, lieutenants, captains, I think pay should be adjusted through those titles. And especially, I mean, to me, if a lieutenant and a captain are making the same amount, but you have this captain that the lieutenants are looking to, that position should, in my opinion, be paid more. I mean, if you have that more responsibility, I mean, I just think
Well-
Well,
Yeah, and as is usual and customary, I think as you step outside of Alpena Township, that is what is usual and customary throughout all fire departments in the state and indeed the country, is you'd be hard pressed to find another department that is structured like ours as far as the pay is concerned, and in particular in the past, the rank. So we've already taken one major step some years ago to move more toward that paramilitary hierarchy. I think this would be a good time to complete that, and actually would make me feel more comfortable in command on the scene. As you guys know, we wear, as per one of the NFPA standards, is a recommendation that you wear different color hats on scene, so you can tell the players, so to speak. When you're dealing with a department with only 20-some people, and 8 of them that show up all have white hats, you've missed the point. So this would be a good time to do that restructuring. Again, I feel more comfortable offering these gentlemen a position as a sergeant to begin with until they've met the requirements for fire officer, and give them a chance to prove themselves on the fire scene under the supervision of Lieutenant Stevens and myself.
I'm still on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why didn't we have a sergeant position put in here?
It's,
I'm just asking.
oh, well, what you have, Norm, to answer your prior question is these were never adopted, and these were drafts that were done up, I believe, there should be a date on them, within the last 2 or 3 years to be presented. And that person left employment that drafted these of the township and didn't move any farther forward. And that's why we didn't even really have, other than requirements, did not have a job description for Chief Osborne, myself when I was deputy chief. Those had to be made up on the fly, so to speak. When we were hired, we certainly didn't have any for lieutenant, sergeant, or firefighter. And this is the time to correct that.
Oh, most definitely, I did. Trustee Bowen still.
And just for the committee, I don't know if you've been to the MTA site, but they got a whole bunch of stuff on fire departments.
Yep.
Okay.
Trustee Palau.
I'm the clerk,
Well,
but.
We're all trustees as well.
Steve mentioned the policy and procedures, and I do agree that's great, and you can have all the policy and procedures written, but if we don't have some type of accountability in place, it's just a book that gets dusty on the shelf, and I hate to say this, but it is a weakness of the township to have accountability. It is one of our weaknesses. My other thing is, we're talking about restructuring the fire department, and I keep hearing restructure, but I'm not getting a good vision of what that structure looks like compared to what it is now.
You want like a IC flow chart?
I guess I want
Well,
to,
I
like,
guess
here's the
that's- I think
chief,
we're all-
here's
we all want
the,
to do the ad
yeah.
hocs.
Well, so.
I mean, I don't know where you guys are going
So
with
we don't
this
know, we
structure.
don't know the answer to that yet.
Okay.
And so, the longest journey starts with the first step, grasshopper. And so we need
Trust
to,
flat.
we need to try to establish where that road will take us. And I totally agree with you that just because we put it in a binder doesn't mean that it's anything other than a dust collector. And so, part of the answer to your question is, on meetings that the fire department would have, is you open up the procedures manual and you talk about this page, or this page, or this page. You keep it in front of people all the time. Same would hold true on the township side.
Right.
And so we don't know what we don't know right now. And so the manuals will at least provide us a roadmap. And as far as the hierarchy is concerned, those are obviously become important considerations. But right now, you know, we essentially are going to have to shoot from the hip a little bit. And whomever is brought in will be brought into a fire department that is in a reorganizational structure. I don't know how else to really put that. If we spend the time to put all those things in place, opportunities go away. And so, yeah, we're backed up against the wall, and we're gonna just have to walk back through the varnish, you know?
Look, actually,
When you guys are done, I can
Dave,
address
yes.
that, Steve.
I appreciate it. I'll take care of
I
it.
just have two things. One, it was my understanding at our last meeting that in the power plan, that there were job descriptions
Yeah.
that, I thought that's where these came from.
No, you didn't get the email, but
No.
the job description would be for firefighter, deputy assistant, fire chief, health
Okay,
and
'cause
safety
that's,
officer.
I thought that's, at first when you were sitting here, I thought
Yeah,
that's where
captain,
they came
lieutenant.
from. Okay, so
There
you
is,
do have
there is not
something
a
else.
sergeant.
So you have something to work with
Oh,
to
yeah.
kind of.
Oh, yeah, and like Norm said, the MTA has a rather robust section on job duties, whether it be fire department or clerk's office or whatever it may be. So it's quite thorough.
Chief?
So I don't get sidetracked, to address the training issue, again, for the board's edification, just the way it's established now, you can take me out back later and string me up, but the way it's structured now is I look to the township, i.e. the board, to provide my department with a township policies and procedures manual, which I have on my shelf. As far as department-specific SOPs and SOGs, those are a work in progress. And so that you guys know, I do have the material from the Michigan Township Association to use as templates. Those are just, and I do have, at this point, I think I have about 20 of them written up. They've just never been presented and formally adopted. The ones that have been are in a binder, and we have 2 trainings a month, well, up until a week or 2 ago. But at those trainings both our medical protocols, the policies and procedures, and the SOPs, SOGs are brought into the training room for review. And generally, let's just say the topic for that night is ladders. And even though we're teaching ladders that night, we have that information available, and at the beginning of every meeting, go around the room and kind of toss questions out to people to see. What we did is try to make it comfortable for them to review any SOGs or SOPs that they've forgotten or not are familiar with at that training, and we certainly will continue that. To address that too, the policies and procedures and SOPs, SOGs, I see the easy fix for that is part of our personnel process, my feeling is when anyone is hired into this department, they certainly, I know I'm kind of talking down now. Let's give them that binder. They also get a binder with the SOPs, SOGs. They get a cover sheet that spells out, what those contain and why they're responsible for them. And then they sign and date that sheet when they receive those. That's their, I don't want to say personal property. That's part of, just like their uniform.
I think we
And
do that right
they
now.
get that. You guys,
And we had already done that. It just, I don't think it was reciprocated
okay.
by members of the fire department at the time. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know that we distributed it.
The policy and
but-
procedures manual, I think I do have them all from the
Okay,
fire
we'll get it.
department returned.
Beautiful.
Okay, and subsequently, as each SOP, SOG is written and then distributed to the members of the fire department, they sign off, yes, I received this, and, I understand it, and that goes in the book, and each one of them should have a copy of that in their locker then.
I think that should also go, don't you think, in their personnel file?
Well, the sign
I mean,
sheet.
just
The sign sheet should,
Which I
yes.
think you had done.
For our policy and
right, but
procedures
not
manual,
for-
but not for the SOG.
No, SOPs, SOGs.
Right.
Could you please tell our constituents out there what an SOP and an SOG is, so they know?
Oh, standard operating procedure and standard operating guideline, so.
Okay.
Go ahead, Steve.
Liz, one of the questions that had been brought up was sort of restructuring the pay structure. Can we, given the fact that we have a union agreement now, amend that? And if so, what's the process?
So, we can't unilaterally change the wages or how those folks are paid just by board action. It still requires agreement of the union. And again, acknowledging the strange situation that you're in, that means that Chris Stevens needs to be involved. Technically speaking, the IAFF, whoever his regular contact would be, I think they had Chris at the table a few years ago from the IAFF. It would be appropriate for him to be notified that this is going on so that we don't have the peculiar scenario down the line where Chris says, all fine by me, do what we gotta do, let's save the department. And the IAFF, who is in fact the exclusive representative for that bargaining unit, says, I never agreed to that. So whenever talking with Chris about this, let's make sure that we're being very clear that we want him to be communicating effectively with his representative and asking him for contact information if needed to be sure that all those lines are clearly communicated. But yes, absolutely. If the parties both agree to make a change, you can make a change.
Okay.
That can be done either by letter agreement right now, or it can wait until your 6-month extension is over. That is all completely up to you folks in terms of the timeline.
Okay.
But it will require their agreement because that is a base term. It's a mandatory subject of bargaining that we simply cannot change on our own.
Okay, good, thank you.
Michelle?
This is kind of jumping back to hiring, and I realize that we do need to hire, we need to jump on it as soon as possible, but we also have to keep recruiting, because it sounds like we all think
Right.
we're probably lucky to get 2 people hired. So Chief, we had spoken maybe a week or 2 ago, you were gonna contact some schools that specialize in firefighting. Have you been able to do that yet?
No, I have not been in contact with them yet, but the what I call the big four, the places that have fire academies and or offer fire science degrees on campus, I think these job postings should go out to each one of them, as well as the MPFFU, who I believe will post them. And then I think Supervisor Skibby and I had talked about the possibility of a couple other professional journals or publications making contact. But I don't want you to think I'm procrastinating. I wanted these job descriptions and a pay scale, so I like the KISS method. I don't have any compunction about sending those out, but I want to be able to say, This township is hiring for this job, these are the hours you're gonna work, this is the pay you're gonna receive. And this certainly is part of that, so.
Yeah, and so can I just, to jump, I want a little clarification. So, Ms. Mills, you had stated earlier, that we would need, a job description to even start that hiring process. Well, we just now had before us 3 job descriptions of just a simple firefighter, a lieutenant, and a captain. I don't know even if the ad hoc committee had time to look at these 3 in comparison to, so I mean, I guess that my quandary is, if we need to have, we can't do anything concurrent with wages until we have an agreement and notified and verified through the IAFF. We're stuck with that same wage schedule as it is currently. Okay.
Yeah.
But if we don't have board-approved job descriptions, what is our, I guess, we have to have board-approved job descriptions, correct? I thought I heard that, so.
If your hiring in any way, shape, or form is intended to be different than your prior hiring, meaning that these are not people who should anticipate being captains or lieutenants the minute their butt hits the chair, then yes, you will need new job descriptions. One approach, which of course bears its own risk, but is an approach nonetheless, is to take some time during a meeting, review the job description, have your chief review the job description for whichever one you are looking to hire for most. And then if he has recommendations for changes, you could discuss and approve those today. Because it is not the prerogative, as much as I adore and appreciate the respect from the ad hoc committee, the ad hoc committee is not there to decide what the job is. The ad hoc committee is there to help continue shaping and moving and working with it. And there is nothing at all that stops you from amending job descriptions if the nature of the position continues to change over time. So if we're talking about the quintessential chicken and egg situation, I think it would behoove this board to spend some time right now reviewing the job description that you're looking to hire for. And if it's remotely close, chief, to what you would anticipate those folks doing, and there aren't anything in there that, for instance, they would never do, because I don't want it to be something that is just sort of a blanket catch-all. But if that's something that looks pretty close, then let's get it in the ballpark and get things rolling.
Well, that's what I was just gonna ask you. I actually have in front of me, but not everybody has that. The job description, the sample job description from the insurance carrier and a sample job description for firefighter that chief put together. And so my thought was, notwithstanding the by word situation, if we have a general job description and we base it upon a general job description, and then over time, like in any job description, we tweak it a little bit, that shouldn't have any negative consequences or repercussions to any union agreement, right? That's just, technology has changed and we're modifying the job description or what have you.
That's right. And of course, the management team as a whole, as a board and as the chief, you retain, even with the labor agreement, the right to decide how to run your organization. I know sometimes that feels a little bit tongue-in-cheek because you have a contract, but the reality is, even this adoption of policies and procedures, that is your prerogative to make updates. And the union's involvement only comes in to the extent that there are significant changes to their terms or conditions of employment. Telling them how to do something is not the same as telling them they may no longer do X, Y, and Z. So long as your SOGs and this job description are capturing the state of affairs or any improvements that need to be made that don't mean that they're going to be subject to some kind of discipline, get to work on it.
So I guess the chicken and the egg, the cart and the horse, we now just, I guess if we're going through an exercise of discussing the par
Can
plan.
I make
job
copies of
description,
those, Steve, for everybody? I think we all have the one from the chief.
All right, then just that one.
Yeah. To be
The one
honest,
from the chief-
I think my only concern is looking at the firefighter. We can
That's-
always come back to the lieutenant.
That's all I care about right now. Yeah, because we're not gonna hire,
No.
in my estimation, and correct me if I'm wrong, either one of you, but my estimation is that, notwithstanding what Chris had said at the ad hoc committee, and then confirming that what you said and then Liz had said, we can hire a firefighter. And if that person graduates to an officer position after their credentials have been met or their training have been met, good for them. But I don't want to start somebody out as an officer, find out that they just didn't cut it, and then we have to let them go, or we have to lower their class or something like that. I don't want to walk into an issue. I would rather do like in any business, you know, you graduate to a particular position. And so that's why I thought hiring somebody as a firefighter and then going from there. So the firefighter job descriptions will be the least rigorous.
I agree.
And we could plug and play pretty easily. We don't have to talk about, you know, when you wash the truck or when you dust off the turnout gear and so on. This is just a general description, and then over a period of time, we can modify. And so seems basic to me, and maybe I'm just underthinking it a little bit.
Well, right now, Clerk Palovich is making some copies of the document that you had given her.
So I got one question. Do we have to have work schedule listed in a job description?
I hope not.
No.
No, that's, when I looked at that, I thought, okay, well, we don't want to do that because we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves into something so rigid that it's difficult to modify out. Thank you.
Wholeheartedly agree.
Well, the department may change over time and we may work different shifts or different schedules.
Well, you know, the department will change
Yeah.
over time, as every department will. So what you have in front of you is sorry we can't get this out to you, Liz, but maybe you can see it from there.
We can email it to you.
Yeah, we can email it. You want me to scan it to you, Nathan? I'll scan it to you.
Thank you.
And so it's really quite straightforward.
I'll actually have it scanned in and sent to you momentarily. Lizzie?
Okay, thank you.
Just if it puts your mind at ease at all, just, I don't like to use the term, in my personality, I tend to be more of a flow chart, yes or no, black and white person, is that we send out the notification for a specific, well, I don't want to say specific job, but for a job, enlisted qualifications for that job. And the fact of the matter is, out of the 14, 15 applications we received back, only 2 of them met the minimum requirements for an officer
Okay.
position. So I don't really see a huge problem with doing the, you know, chief, captain, lieutenant, and four firefighters, with being as that, well, and we don't know that we're gonna get Mr. Willis or another qualified candidate for that matter of fact, but the fact that there's, you know, more than likely 4 or 5 of them that are gonna spend the next 2 to 4 years trying to accomplish all the requirements, fulfill the requirements of that position. But while they may still, most of them that we talked to had some minimal incident command or exposure to the command structure within a fire department. Like I say, and that would be, you know, that's where I get to do what I'm paid for and make sure that,
Well, if you look at, just at this simple one, there's a section on the second page, or starting at minimum requirements. It talks about the expectation over a 24-month period, over a 12-month period. So, I mean, it's built into it that whomever this person would be doesn't just walk in with all of the credentials. That's essentially why they're basically a trainee. And so, did you get that emailed off to her?
I did.
Oh,
I sent it, forwarded it to Ms. Mills. But I think in that same vein, trustee Lappin, is even if everybody met those requirements, the reality is if, say in a scenario where somebody meets every requirement of an officer
Yeah,
as a candidate, we bring them here. It's a full year to, at least to get accustomed to everything that they're gonna have to be immersed into anyway. So I
Absolutely.
think that no matter where, we're looking at a probationary stance, period.
yeah, I mean,
But-
according to the union contract, which the probationary period is 12 months anyway.
Yeah,
And so, so basically, all the ad hoc committee is looking to do is to continue to strive to move forward. And so the purpose, I think, of this special meeting was to bring you all up to speed, of course, and then to essentially get your blessing to continue to move forward. And so,
well, and that's wonderful. And we're here today
Right.
having such a meeting, and now we're finally looking at a position description as vague as and open as possible. We know that we can amend it as time
Right.
progresses, great. But now we need to sit here, and this is the exercise, is we got two different firefighter potentials.
Where did this one come from?
The chief made that one.
Oh, okay.
That came,
Okay.
that was the internal one, correct? That,
Yeah.
So is there anything we need to take from the chiefs to put in here?
That's that's the exercise I guess we're kind of hamstrung at, because other than that, with,
And I would look to the chief for that because that would be his expertise,
Should be.
not mine.
so you have both of these before you, Chief, correct?
Yes.
Let's go line by line, because let's call the PAR plan, this
Yep.
is the PAR plan. We'll call this
Which one's part plan?
PAR plan, the
One that-
old, the one that just came to you. Dave gave the initial. So, Chief, by all means, let's start with what needs to stay on the existing non-adopted version.
Do you want a highlighter?
Or
Which one are you
actually,
looking at?
better yet, which the one that was dispersed by the chief.
Okay.
What needs to stay, what needs to go? And then we can drop over to the park plan description and remove whatever needs to be there and add and create one document. Because I think, from what I'm hearing, is we need to have this in place and board approved. We can't do anything with pay scale. Yeah,
it's already been established.
pay scale's established, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And then we'll follow up with the rest of the recommendation. Yes. Ms.
Well,
Ellis.
I mean, unless I'm not getting this, but Dave, what you created is what you believe a firefighter should
His
know
responsibilities.
and all of that. So-
Yeah.
So
You-
basically, it seems to me like we would want to make sure this is in the PAR plan agreement,
That's
not
what-
take things out of
Right. I
chiefs.
think you'll find that,
I think
I
that-
think it's just gonna be laid out differently. I think you're gonna find that what
Oh.
chief has is.
Just to make sure that
Yeah,
it's.
yeah, yeah.
So outside of, in this exercise, so outside of the fact that we've already discussed per trustee Kroll, we're looking at not pigeonholing ourselves with the schedule
Does
in
Lizzie-
that, correct?
Correct.
Does
Okay,
Lizzie
so
have
right
this?
now, that's off the table,
No.
it's yours.
Do you want me to send it to
Is there anything from the park plan that isn't on the existing that should be? Yes,
Nathan, I'm gonna scan, does Lizzie not have this one? 'Cause I-
scan it, yeah, I'll get that first.
So let me ask you this. Does, on the firefighter position as provided by me on the sample, item number 1, what a firefighter is. Is that what a firefighter is?
I've got no problems with that. What I was just gonna throw out is, I got, again, not to bore you guys, but my mom was a librarian, so I grew up in a library. And as I'm reading down here, I think the one you provided, Mr. Lappin, is cleaned up
Yeah,
and a lot simpler and more to the point than, because I bullet pointed a lot of things in order to try to not to miss, but they're implied
Well,
in the PAR. So, and also there's going to be absolutely nothing personal on my part if you throw out any part of mine or the whole thing. I was just trying to catch everything in the net.
that's
I
precisely
like
what.
the PAR one.
That's precisely where I was gonna go with this, is that notwithstanding the order by which it has been submitted, but is the intent of both documents sort of bled into one another? So if the description of a firefighter is what a firefighter is, then we should put okay next to it.
I'm putting stars by it, but
Okay,
okay also
we'll go with
works.
stars.
Yeah.
General description of duties, does that sort of fit in there, or does something need to be amended, or is this adequate information?
No, that actually looks like a pretty boilerplate mission statement from a lot of departments.
So that's
In
a
their general
start.
job description.
So general descriptions of duties, good with that. Continue down the list, chief. This is your department. What needs to be, at least get us to a start point. We can always amend later, but let's make sure that we capture the essence of what a firefighter position will be. Essential duties and responsibilities.
Item number 1, does that make sense?
Well, yeah, it's performing firefighting activities, including driving apparatus, operating pumps, related equipment, laying hose, and performing fire containment, extinguishment, and overhaul tasks. That's, again, in my opinion, is a nicer way of including some of the bullet points I put over and putting it in paragraph form. I've got no problem with that.
Okay,
Number 2, performs emergency medical service activities, including providing medical treatment as allowed by the individual or licensure level of the department. Again, emergency medical services should be, evaluates, maintains, handles. Yeah, handles minor medical care and other emergency services. That was just a short, sweet.
so, I'm sorry, say that again, please?
I'm talk reading.
Okay, so you talked about minor?
Well, that was on the bullet points,
Oh,
on
That
number
was on
2.
his fourth bullet point from the bottom. Handles minor medical care and other emergency services.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and again, I would have to say that item 2 actually says that
All right,
better.
okay.
Onward.
Participates in training, attends classes in firefighting, emergency medical hazardous materials, and related subjects, and some of those subjects are listed over here, so.
Yep,
So you're good with 3 as well?
I am.
Okay.
I actually like this description. Operates radios and other communication equipment. That's required by our training standards. That I don't think I necessarily even put in there.
Okay.
Carries out all duties in conformance with federal, state, county, city, and local laws and ordinances. Again, very true.
The only thing that I was wondering about there is if we should reference any kind of protocols for your medical control.
certainly add it.
Yes.
Yeah. And Ms. Mills, you have both of the documents that we're kind of going through. So by all means, if you have any recommendations as we're going through this, please let us know. Number 6, Chief?
How do we want to change?
So
five?
we
How are
want
we
to add
changing
number
5?
8,
Yeah, how are we
Well,
changing number
Lindsay?
5?
to work in concert with medical protocol?
I would put that, I'm sorry, I would put that in with number 2 because that's germane to emergency medical services.
So you,
I think number 5 addresses the general expectation that they're going to behave lawfully and conformity with all expectations. So I would just add it there, Trustee Lappin, or whomever's making the notations, that carries out duties in conformance with federal, state, county, city, and local laws and ordinances. Perhaps you just add a comma and protocol, something to that effect, to capture that concept without trying to, I don't want to draft this thing. We're just trying to get something on paper.
So including protocols of medical,
I would just
protocols.
add and protocols.
Okay.
Because then that's gonna cover it.
okay, period, fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just reread it the way I just noted this. Number 5, carries out duties in conformance with federal, state, county, city, and local laws. I removed and, added a comma, ordinances, added a comma, and protocols. All in agreement? Thank you for the thumbs up.
Do we really need that other comma?
Yeah, do you? Because you don't usually put a comma before and.
No.
Actually,
No.
do I?
I was always told that it was, a
No.
comma was
No
like saying
comma
and.
before and.
No.
Okay, I stand corrected, and I love it.
People like
So-
to correct grammar, so.
Well, I know.
Learn that.
Well, I mean, sometimes I'm a little terse. I know.
Hence the term
Me too.
grammar Nazi. So
Oh,
that's
Could
it.
you do that more diligently, please?
I'll be more diligent. Moving forward, number 6.
This covers, pretty much pre-plans, communications, training programs, and yes. Like it.
Okay. And obviously 7's pretty straightforward as well.
I have a
Yes.
suggestion. Should we also add in there the, standard operating
SOPs.
procedures and standard operating guidelines in
That
that as
would be on
well?
number 7, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
I would assume 7 covers that.
Well,
We could cer,
yeah, Ms. Mills.
And the only addition I would make there is that we don't want them simply to adhere to the department policies and procedures. We do want them to comply with other township policies that are not otherwise controlled by the department. So adhere to township and department policies and procedures would be appropriate.
Township
And department.
and department.
Township and department, or
Yes.
just township?
Township and department.
Oh, there are going to be some things that the department is not going to have policies on, that the township does, for instance, to make the clerk's life easier at payroll time. And we want to make sure they're adhering to that too.
It's all about the clerk.
Thought about me.
Guess we're all on the same page? Okay, continuing into the next paragraph, the example of duties, moving into.
Stuck on 7 is making the clerk's life easier in the union contract.
It should be.
Should be okay. Now,
How dare it not?
illustrations, I like that disclaimer.
so yeah, I was just gonna say, that's nothing more than a quick disclaimer which
Yeah.
allows us to make certain changes.
Yes. Okay.
And the,
Section 4.
minimum required education and training is like, again, boilerplate for the Michigan Firefighter Training Council. Both AB, actually AB and C are all in line with that.
Chief, in your copy, yours includes education and experience and age requirements indicating firefighter 1 and 2, basic EMT, CPR, all of the good stuff, including incident command.
Though-
Is it the case that those folks are expected to have it upon hire? Or is it more like it's stated here that there's a timeline for attaining firefighter 1 and 2 in your department? And if it's the latter, is that timeline consistent with the timeline that you expect adherence to for your department?
My simple answer to that is we expect them to have Michigan Firefighter Training Council minimum training requirements prior to submitting an application. Anything beyond that would apply to officer requirements, they're given, I keep saying 2, Nathan's corrected me several times, they have 2 to 3 years to complete. So, and what I added in there under education and experience are more specific to the department that we expect them to have to be able to function in that officer capacity.
So that's what I'm really looking to clarify, because it's not the case that somebody walking in the door needs to have those in their hand. It is the case that there's a timeline for doing so. And all I'm suggesting is I want to make sure that what we see here at the top of page 2 of Trustee Lappin's document is in fact accurate in terms of your expectations. For instance, is a firefighter expected to go through incident command in that time frame in this new classification that we're clarifying right now? Or is that something reserved to a later date for them and it isn't as much of a concern for minimum qualifications?
Reserved to a later date. As a matter of fact, again, sorry Nate, but past practice has been, they cast a wide net, and any candidates in the past that they've felt compelled to hire have then been, for instance, if they had everything but the required NIMS and or incident command, we'd go ahead and make them a contingent offer and explain to them that they had a set time period to complete those qualifications, certifications.
So I understand all of that. All I'm asking is the time frame listed in Trustee Lappin's document accurate for all of those things?
12
12
months.
months.
12 and 24 months.
Where's 20? Oh.
B.
Absolutely. I think that's a generous time frame. Actually, because most,
As do I.
yeah, most coming in can, once we give them the template, have those completed within a month to 2 months.
Should it
Well,
be
then maybe we
changed?
should tighten that up.
Yeah,
So,
Well, then, if there's certain areas where we don't want to have somebody just sort of labor the way through something for a long period of time, and if the usual protocol would be 3 months, then let's make it 3 months.
What is,
I think it's particularly important here where you're already so short-staffed. If you have somebody come on who does not have these capabilities and can linger on them, you won't be able to put them in the station by themselves, right?
correct.
So what's an appropriate time?
So,
The flip side of that coin, or the other blade on the sword, so to speak, though, is when we hire one person at a time is not a problem, but this is a new one for us. If I were to hire 4 people and say you have 3 months to complete these, and then the next thing I certainly can do it. What I'm telling you is what I would foresee, the situation I would foresee is that all 4 of those employees would be cutting and pasting my schedule every other day to be able to take and complete some of those classes. Individually, I should probably correct myself, 12 months is very generous, but to get 4 people to do it all at once unless we brought someone in or found them a specific class. Again, I would hate to hire 5 people and then have a week period there where there's only 2 of us because the other 5, went down to Southfield to class, so to speak, or you understand what I'm...
so we do say,
actually, Steve, Michelle's.
oh,
I honestly, Chief, don't think we're hiring 4 people at the same time. I think it's going to be staggered. So I don't think that's a huge issue. And I think if we do adopt this and put a new ad out for just firefighter, we might get people applying who never applied before because our last ad was for an officer and these people didn't think they were qualified. So we'll probably hit, hopefully, a larger group of people, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with that.
But I just don't feel like we're going to be hiring 4 people simultaneously.
I don't know, I've stated before, I think we'll be lucky if we catch 2 of them out of that 5.
I agree.
so it does state, items B and C do say within certain periods of time. That doesn't mean they necessarily should take that long, but we are saying they could take that long. So if you're suggesting that under B, that the reasonable and customary timeline would be 6 months, then let's change it to 6 months.
I agree with Steve.
Yeah, I don't, the reality is, we're looking at, as it stands here today, the 5 interviews that took place, none are local. And if we give 2 months to complete something, or 2 years to complete something, and they never do,
We've expended a lot of time.
Yeah, and you guys certainly can do that. I just want you to bear in mind that, and again, that as this is a template, MTA is certainly correct on it, but our department didn't pull those numbers and MTA didn't pull those numbers. They're giving you these numbers based off the recommendation of the Michigan Firefighter Training Council.
This is from Power Plan, not
Yeah,
MTA.
but that doesn't mean that we're necessarily just throwing
Yeah.
letters around. We've
Right.
done our
Because
research.
that, yeah, actually what we'd be doing is taking Michigan Firefighter Training Council standards and saying, yeah, we're gonna make them more strict. That's my only, what I would
Well,
offer.
could we
when
make
you're
them
considering
strict
this.
for this hiring process and then at a later date go?
Well, I believe we can make them more strict. I don't believe we can make them more lenient.
Yes.
I agree with Steve.
So can we go at 12 months instead of 24 for B? Is that?
Well, they're gonna have fire 1 and 2, coming in, they will have 4 of the NIMS classes that were, well, and again, these aren't for officer, these are for firefighter. And I know both Vince and myself can teach ICS, so I wouldn't be uncomfortable with 12.
Okay.
What I
For
just
me?
said prior,
You would be uncomfortable or wouldn't be?
wouldn't.
Okay. I-
12 it is, okay.
And then for C would,
So I want to, before we discontinue this ramble, I want to make sure that what I've heard to this point in B, are we going from 24 months? What is the new allotment of time that is
within 12 months.
within 12 months? Just want to make sure that
And
my
the chief,
notes-
you do feel that's doable?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
May I,
Yes, by all means.
may I just remind that item B is about your volunteer and paid on call contingency.
Yeah.
It's item C that I would be focusing your attention on right now because that's the folks that you're looking to hire. So item B could in fact be 24 months very reasonably. I think Chief, you're absolutely right. If you get a slew of 10 people who want to be on your on-call roster, well, that's going to keep you very, very busy. But if you have full-timers, I guess that was the thrust of my question. I'm sorry if I was not articulate enough. My biggest concern is item C, because item C is what you're trying to hire for at this stage.
So then, given what you're saying, chief, the 12 months on C is still a reasonable number.
Well, yes, that's the, like I say, these were set forth by the Firefighter Training Council, so.
So do we leave it as is?
So
then?
I say, can we leave B as 24?
Why don't we just leave it the way it is written,
Right, as 24.
as drafted?
Is C reasonable for 12 months?
Yes.
That couldn't be shortened up, or just because?
Well, you know, I suppose, and I think where Liz is probably
Okay,
going.
so just one at a time. We're starting to jump. So trustee
Yeah,
Lappin.
I think where Liz is probably going, especially with B, is that these paid-on-call or volunteers have a whole other life that they operate.
Yeah.
And that their jobs, their day jobs, may not be as liberal, and so that's probably the 24-month timeline, is so that it's not, maybe not so much taking the tests and so on, it's just finding the time to take those tests. So I believe that's probably where you're coming from, right, Liz?
Yes, typically, and I think as Chief has stated, it's just a matter of body getting them through the process, making sure they're available to provide service, that they're already certified to perform. And you're right, absolutely. You know, the full-timers, this should be their focus because that's what we're paying them to do
Right.
and to be. And that, I guess, is the thrust of my comments, is to keep our attention focused on making sure that the full-time firefighter certification requirements are the way Chief wants them to be going forward for his department, as we look to hire new people based on the ad hoc committee's recommendations.
Right.
Before we do move forward, since we're satisfied with B and C, but let me go back because it's a very valid point and question is, where do we stand today with our paid on call? How many paid on call individuals are on our roster now?
15,
How many are active?
10.
Thought we only had 5 active.
That's what I thought.
That
from
was the
like a
that was the
couple-
number a couple weeks ago. So
Yeah.
these are
Well, okay,
Because I wanna have a well-rounded thought, and I think we all should know where our current status is as a fire department.
My definite, okay, by active, because I'll had a different definition. By active, I'm referring to the people on the roster that have met their minimum training requirements and participated with the department to the level where they have at least completed the now state mandated minimum hours of training. Again, that's something new within the last couple of years. Used to be you got your fire 1 and 2 and that was it. Now we're required by the state to have a minimum of 18 hours a year. And there are the 5 that I'm referring to have not met that. And that needs to be addressed. But and again, as the paid on call contingent, remind everybody that ebbs and flows. We have people that might show up to 4 or 5 fires in a row, and then we might not see them again for 2 or 3 months sans training. So, and then we have other people that just.
About how many fires do we have a year?
The number I gave Chief Forbush for that study was we were averaging about 20 a year over the span of the last 5.
Structure fires and wildland?
Structure,
Combined.
wildland, and, I count vehicle fires and exposures as,
Any fire, right? We're counting.
yeah, for me, fire,
Fire's
any
fire.
unwanted fire that requires suppression. I'll make it that simple.
So are we good on this?
Yeah, I just, yeah, go ahead, Laura.
I just have one question, and is Lizzie still with us?
Yeah, she just had to get.
Okay, I noticed on Chief's list, and these might be things that take place during, like, for example, must pass physical and written tests, drug screening exam, medical exam, valid driver's license. I mean, are those things that are like done
I don't think
prior
that's
to?
I don't think that's a job description, that's an expectation of employment.
That's
Yeah,
part of the hiring
that's
process.
education and
That was my
experience.
question.
Pre-employment.
Yeah.
Okay, so getting back to trustee, yes, Ms. Mills, by all means.
Your procedure for hiring doesn't necessarily need to be in the qualifications listing or the description itself. One thing that the chief's description does include, which I do think should be incorporated in your job description, even if very high level, is a reference to the physical environment and requirements of the position, because that is important if and when we need to evaluate an Americans with Disabilities Act request for accommodations. So you'll see in Chief's notes there at the bottom of page 1, he's got lifting, fitness, uncertainty, some other things like that. I'm not necessarily saying that we need to cut and paste, but I am saying it might be appropriate for us to at least highlight that this is a high stress, physically intensive job that requires ability to lift, something along those lines in a sentence, maybe 2 or 3 sentences, just getting to the gist of it so that we can be extra clear and easily defend any concerns that might be raised in that regard.
Wouldn't
I
that
hope
fall,
it goes without saying that being a firefighter requires physical fitness and the ability to deal with high heat and stress, but you never know.
wouldn't that be better served under item 3, essential duties and responsibilities? As opposed to qualifications?
Trustee Laffin, I suppose I would suggest to you that it would be a separate item. You've got Roman 1, 2, 3,
Okay,
and
okay.
4 at this point. You could have Roman 5 as work environment and requirements of, physical requirements or something to that effect.
Okay. On our job application currently, is there anything in there that suggests that we should, that these standards should be able to be met? Or is it just a templated application?
It's a templated,
Okay.
generic.
Okay.
So since we do have to have a job description. So now we're looking at a new Roman numeral 5 with work environment and physical requirements task. We need to create that, those two sentences, so that we have that able to be adopted, because I think, from what I've been hearing, that's kind of order of, go ahead.
Hey Liz, do we have to can't we just bullet point that? I mean, we don't have to define what lifting means, do we? And we don't have to define all these would could be just simple bullet points, right?
That's right, and I'm actually pulling up some materials here, so please stand by. I could probably just give you a couple of sentences.
Not a problem. While you're doing that, I do have a question that came through YouTube, and I think, Chief, you could probably add some clarification to it. Could you please clarify the ranked officer versus certified fire officer, so that some people tend to think that an officer means rank?
Well, I'll try to. Being an old Navy guy, I think people should be aware if there's a difference between rate and rank. I'll preface that with an example of in the Navy, you can have someone that has the rank of first lieutenant or lieutenant commander that certainly can be in command of a vessel, and they're referred to as captain. Okay, that does not mean that their rank is captain in the Navy. It means that they're in command of that vessel, and that's the difference between their rate, okay, which would be captain, they're in command of a vessel, and their rank being lieutenant commander. So, with the advent of that, again, the way the department first was stood up and established, there was no chief, no deputy chief. The people that commanded the scene and were incident command upon hire were designated as captains, okay? And that's what we try to do in the hiring process. Is the state of Michigan now does require you within a certain period of time to, you have that rank, but you have to be certified, and that's why they have a certain period of time. So that's the difference between being referred to as captain and being a certified fire officer as per Michigan Firefighter Training Council. Did that help?
Can you read the question again,
I will.
please?
Can we please clarify ranked officer versus certified fire officer was the question.
Oh, yeah, certified fire officer would, to me, would indicate that someone has attended the minimum required classes per the Michigan Firefighters Training Council and NFPA standards, and met those standards and objectives of education, that they have been certificated, or for lack of a better term, licensed, certificated by the state of Michigan as a fire officer.
And do we require that before someone's given the title
Yes.
of officer?
And for example, yourself, what fire officer trainings do you have?
I took what I refer to as the pre-90s fire officer 1 and 2. And I actually have, for the last 16 to 18 years, been teaching fire officer classes, so.
So you have the pre-90s, so you don't have to go through the modern structure of fire officer? Because technically right now there are fire officers 1, 2.
1, 2, and 3.
Okay. And so by your educational, doing those officer trainings pre-90s, that was, you don't have to do any?
That meant the then minimum requirements.
So your grandfather, basically.
Well, you're not well, yeah, that would be a term for it. For instance, there have been 3 changes in the curriculum since I've been in the service. And the new ones, I believe, were just, if I'm not incorrect, but last January 1 or the one before that, no, last January 1, there is now a new curriculum. And not to bore everybody, but for example, I had to take a series of prerequisite classes before I could, which were educational methodology. There was MITCO, PITCO, CITCO, which are acronyms for training specific to fire officers. With the change, they're the only prereq you have to do now for fire officer, as my understanding, is you have to get a fire instructor rating, and the state has been satisfied that if you meet the requirements for fire instructor 1, that you've met all your fire officer prerequisites, and you can then apply for the classes.
Thank you.
Did that satisfy whomever?
Sure.
Okay,
I did not get any,
good enough.
Can we finish
Yeah.
this document?
yeah, that's that's why I wanted to kill a little time in this conversation, points of clarification to afford Ms. Mills some time to put potentially a couple sentences together. And back to you, Ms. Mills.
Supervisor Skibby, I actually put a couple of samples, reference the firefighter side and the medical side in your email. I thought maybe you could pull that up in front and read it to everybody, or I can do that for you at your preference.
I can do so, I just opened it
Do you
up.
just want to print it and we'll all read it?
I think that you will benefit from no trombone noises. I want him to practice, but I want you to be able to do your work. So it's for you to read it.
That's reasonable.
I'm printing it. That way.
We want to hear the trombone.
Just wait, I send it to a printer that does not exist.
Are you printing 7 copies?
I will be, as soon as.
And to clarify, those are just, as I said, borrowed from materials we've used before. One is specific to the firefighter, the other has reference to the more medical side, and I will defer to Chief as to what he thinks most accurately captures his expectations in his department, but at least that gives you something to work with. It also includes the short blurb about, which Trustee Lappin was alluding to, these are the demands of your work environment and your job. These are the essential functions. Obviously, if reasonable accommodations are warranted, we would make those.
So can I just ask a question? Once this is done, then, Chief, you'll be able to send it out to those 4, you called it the big 4?
Yes,
Okay.
I'll clean it up with official letterhead and logo. And
I think what I sent to you was a Word document. So you should be able to just edit, copy, paste. And if I didn't, sorry.
I know where you live.
Thank you for your sincerity. Trustee Lappin.
Yeah,
Always appreciate it.
empathy is a strong point.
Okay, so before you now are exactly what Lizzie was describing in terms of the physical demands of work environment. Take a second to please read through it so that we can move forward.
See you later.
Wasn't she gonna ask Chief which one of these he prefers?
No, one is specific to fire, the other one to emergency
Oh.
medical services, because they're going to be doing both.
So Lizzie, at the end of each one of those sections, it might be including but not limited to, and then outlining just those bullet points.
And I was trying to look at your form versus what I sent you. So the idea is that if you wanted to include Roman 5, you could simply copy those two sentences that say the physical demands and work environment characteristics, yada, 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 and then list out what portions of the 2 or 3 supplied paragraphs there you'd like. And yes, including but not limited to's are fine. I'm not going to get married to that at this point. The idea is just to get it in front of folks.
Okay,
So your Roman 5 could begin with the sort of disclaimer and then describe the work environment and physical demands as including but not limited to, bullet out what items you do like from those options.
okay.
But a point of clarification, we are looking at a firefighter job description that also ensures that they have an EMT licensure, correct?
Correct.
So,
So
I
then
mean,
that-
the reality is both of the primary articles that Lizzie had sent us would need to be encapsulated because we're not just hiring a firefighter
Right.
so it'd be a combination
Right.
therein.
And having said that, then the first page position description should read firefighter / EMT. Right?
Yes.
Right, Liz? All right,
Sorry,
consensus.
wasn't clear who you were asking. Yes, you're correct.
Anybody that would respond?
You're not at home.
Yeah. It's training from having children.
So, has everybody had time to read their way through this document as their recommendations, just to make sure that we are all on the same page with Roman numeral number 5 and the completion, hopefully, of this exercise of a job description?
Yeah, I gave you was kind of I'm a film student at UCLA, and you guys got what was gave was more of a Martin Scorsese, more to the point, and
Well, you know, it's film students, and it's a tough road. It's becoming a poet. So we have,
I like the depth of the language,
to me, I don't think that it would impede adding
the whole thing.
the whole thing.
Yeah,
That's my standpoint. Why not list it out there so that it's known, but not pigeonhole ourselves into one? I mean, to me, I think that it's a firefighter / EMT, and we add physical demands and work environment as a title, and then highlight all verbiage. Cover every base that we can.
okay. Where I grew up, it's
What
pretty,
about-
and there ain't no 40-pound words.
So who has this document that's gonna update it, Dave, or who?
Well, right now, we're, and Lizzie, did you send that, this last document to me? I already closed out of it. It's in Word, correct? Or,
The email?
yeah.
You can just
It's in
copy and paste
email,
from your
so
email.
You should be able to copy and paste.
Okay, we can
Well,
and then
just,
walk
just
you
change
through
the
that.
font.
well, thank you very much.
Well,
What'd you say?
So we'll walk you through that.
You are so harsh toward me.
I'm
I love
not,
it.
I'm not opposed to, like you said, quite literally copying and pasting
Yeah.
and sticking it in there. And then I don't know if you would need to put the bullet points in there.
Nope, no.
No,
No.
no, to me, do you have this PAR plan in?
Yeah,
You have it in Word, correct? Or depending on,
maybe.
maybe so, maybe not?
If it's in a PDF, though, we have the program to switch it from a PDF to a Word. Lynn
Yeah.
can do
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
So
She'll be here
if,
tomorrow.
I think it's in
No
Word. I didn't try to alter it, but I
Okay.
think it's in Word.
But we don't
I can
know that
obviously
one,
check
right?
that. Or if you open your email, you should be able to check.
Yeah.
That's right. So you said you have a meeting tomorrow morning?
Yes.
Tomorrow morning.
So, if possible, it'd be nice for you to have this finished document for your meeting tomorrow.
Yeah, I'd like to have that. That way the entire committee, which is basically just 3 more
You're
people,
meeting at 7:30.
would have a full picture of it.
Well, like Michelle said, maybe Lynn could do it, because she's working from home.
Yeah, I mean, either way, it will be done, because we're gonna have to vote on it. We're gonna have to adopt.
Yeah,
What we're good at is the changes are made. so-
We're
Right.
good, we
We
just
can-
need someone to make the changes, but we
can
we
vote
know
on it
exactly
right
what
now.
those are gonna be.
Right.
I think we're all in agreement on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Good.
and then what I like about what we're doing is that we can take exactly the same format for any of the other job descriptions. We don't have to sort of reinvent the wheel again. Literally an exercise of going down those job descriptions, checking them off, which agree, and modifying those that don't, and then going from there. But that, we don't have to do that today. We can do that as time allows.
And I did check, it is in Word, so I can actually probably in a short period of time take both documents and merge them
Excellent.
today.
Excellent.
So that's,
That'd be fabulous.
I'll work diligently at it, but I'm pretty certain that I can. Well, I mean, so to that end, if we're merging what Ms. Mills presented to us under section 5 of physical demands and work environment, and with all the other corrections to this position description of firefighter. are we in
Firefighter slash
agreement-
EMT.
Yes, slash EMT. Are we in agreement as a board that this will be a document that we're all comfortable with moving forward?
Yes.
I am fine with that.
So I would entertain, at this point in time, Lizzie, before we go into the potentials of a motion, are there anything that is glaring to you from the outside with the corrections and the implementation of the physical demands and work environment that you presented to us? Are there anything else that we should give consideration to?
No, you've covered all the bases. You certainly could spend days in a rabbit hole on crafting job descriptions, but I think this gets your grounds covered, allows you to have something to begin using for hiring purposes. When it's complete, make sure that Mr. Stevens gets a copy so he's advised of the official creation of that position, so that he has the opportunity if he wishes to have that discussion I mentioned earlier. But otherwise, I would wish the board well in adopting that and getting underway.
Okay.
Thank you.
With that being said, I will entertain a motion to approve the firefighter EMT job description that we have just laid out.
So moved.
We have a motion on the table. Is there support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Clerk Flavich, yes. Treasurer Ellery Summers.
Yes.
Trustee Kroll,
Yes.
Trustee Polly,
Yes.
Trustee Lappin,
Yes.
Supervisor Skibby.
Yes. Okay, so we took care of the job description of firefighter EMT.
Do we need to do a motion on, so once this is done, Dave can offer employment to any of these individuals? Do we have to take a vote on that?
That would have to be a function of the board to allow the chief to reach out. I guess I would like some clarification as to the context. To reach out to 5, to reach out to, because I want to be clear, you know, because from my personal standpoint, we had 5. I don't know the 2 that you just brought. I mean, I don't know.
No, that's for discussion a little bit down the road.
Okay,
So.
Today or different?
yeah, because.
Well, if you guys are curious, just let me, I'll try to be very quick. These, the one from, here's obviously a familiar name in there, but Christopher Wilson from Alcona is one of 3 or 4 people that contacted either me or or Chris and said, we hear you guys are having problems filling shifts. I am not looking for full-time employment, but right now, if you need me to pick up some shifts throughout the next couple months, I'd be happy to do that with the board's permission. And I told them to send me a resume and listed his qualifications to be able to do that. And again, no, I'm not gonna, he is from Alcona, I'm not gonna bring him in and turn him live. I'd work a couple days with him. And the other one is from my son, Christopher, who is in Arizona right now, and he expressed the same, because of our nepotism clause and what's going on in his life, he said he is not expecting or trying to obtain full-time employment. He just said he'd be happy to come out and work some shifts for the next couple months until we can get full-time staff hired back up. I did tell him about the policy on nepotism in the township. But,
Well, I guess that could be, those both could be items that you have conversation in that tomorrow's ad hoc committee and.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't want to put ourselves in a place if we have a policy and procedures manual in place, then we have a policy and procedures manual in place. If we have a nepotism issue, then we have a nepotism issue. If Mr. Wilson would like to help us out, but is not looking for full-time employment, I see that as a opportunity to fill a gap. I don't see that as an opportunity to fill a slot. The other name that you were mentioning,
Willis.
Willis, I don't have that resume in front of me, so I don't know anything about that person. But it seems to me, maybe to answer the question that was posed, is that we need to make an offer, or offers, but we don't know that they're even interested. And so I guess having a job description is great, but we need a body to fill that job description. So I think what tomorrow's meeting will probably entail is probably talking more about whoever this person is, or persons are, and then somewhere along the line try to make an offer contingent upon board approval. I'm not quite sure how we do that.
How long do we want to put this out again? I mean, so you may offer whatever, 2 out of the 5, and maybe we get 1 or maybe we get none. I don't know. But I don't think sitting back, I don't think we can do that because we're going to run those guys ragged with 2 guys trying to run 1 station. So they're still contingent upon fulfilling all these other requirements. So, we may bring them on if they don't fulfill those. They're under a probation period. I mean, there's
a lot of moving parts as we move forward.
There's the physical.
We all understand that, but Michelle, that's a very good point, because as we discuss bringing on staffing, there's an inherent significant cost that we should all be cognizant of. What we started looking at bringing in new firefighters, and the full physical that we have to provide up front is to the tune of
The last one was 4,300.
4,300?
per person.
All the tests that have to be done.
So that's just the physical. Something new that kind of got thrown into the mix, and I find it somewhat entertaining, and given the fear, well, some of the things in the field that firefighters and EMTs deal with, is the potentials of putting in there a psyche evaluation as well. Because I think, Chief, from your standpoint, I don't think you could say that that's ever a bad thing to have.
well, again, I would offer that in most departments, maybe larger or not, I believe that's usual and customary. I've certainly been through my share of them, so I don't know how I slipped through those, but yeah, no, that's an excellent idea. But yeah, then
Yeah.
how do we pay for it?
Is
Yeah,
there, I mean, I'm just asking because 4,300 is a lot. Steve, is
Yeah.
there anything like that we could do, like with our insurance to
Well, they're
help?
not on our insurance.
Yeah.
But we're paying for those,
Right.
We have
just
to
out
pay-
of pocket, so there's
So,
nothing.
no, you mean like a grant or something like that?
No, I didn't know if there was something in the insurance, on the
No.
township's insurance that.
No.
They're employed.
Yeah, they're not
No, I know,
employed.
I get
No,
that.
but I do have to
but-
wonder, I do have to wonder out loud, is whether or not the Fire and EMS Committee has any kind of a relationship with any medical facility to get discounted costs.
Like if
I
we
don't
had
know the
our
answer
own-
to
I'm
that.
not aware.
If
We
we had our own
get them done
doctor.
through Mid-Michigan.
Yeah, I don't know the call, I don't know that answer. I can find that out, I can call today.
I was just
but
curious. if
Wow,
we
I
could-
I did not anticipate
So I guess,
that.
I just don't want to hinder him from making any contingent offers or offering employment. So we're not sitting here another week or two down the road.
Well, yeah, and I don't want to have a meeting tomorrow and then you ask me to call another special meeting. Because I know that time is of the essence. I would like to have some more actionable items condensed. I know right now we're just trying to get things continued to move so that the ad hoc can continue to explore different veins. So what is a recommendation from the ad hoc? To give chief permission to move forward with procurement of upwards of 5 people? Or are we just looking at the 1 or 2 of the better qualified candidates? Because if some of these candidates don't meet even the entry levels,
Let's ask the
I
chief
totally
then.
agree with you there. Given the fact that we're looking at such a significant cost, that we could be spending $20,000 for no apparent reason. So these people have to be pre-qualified, and perhaps one of the things that we should do tomorrow is to look at those resumes as an ad hoc committee, grade them as individuals, and then from those, find out who had the most stars from each individual person who reviewed those resumes. And then, based upon that criteria, if we come up with 2 people, talk to those 2 people. And not just throw out some
Yeah.
net. that-
Well, find out if they're even interested and then.
Well, yeah,
if
then
one
of
them
course
aren't,
we gotta
then
find
go
out
to your
if they're,
third person.
if they're even available.
So I think, let's just have a little stop-start here. Because both Norm and I and Chief sat in those 5 interviews.
Yeah,
From my standpoint,
Yeah.
and this is to the ad hoc committee.
Okay.
From my standpoint, and this is just one, we can go right down the line. There was one person that right now, if we were to offer and give permission, go for it. I'd be fine with that. But to open up a gambit and start trying to recruit some of the.
oh, yeah,
the
no,
unknowns.
I don't wanna do that. I don't wanna seem like we are so, in need that we forego
Yeah.
principles of hiring just to
Yeah.
get warm bodies.
Exactly.
Because somewhere along the line, that's gonna burn us, no pun intended.
Well, yeah, and I don't want to continuously rush into the next fire.
No,
So from my standpoint, with my experience through that process, and I'll let both chief and trustee speak for themselves. Out of those 5, there was one that, as it stands right now, I would not hesitate to allow to procure. Trustee Foley?
One gentleman stood out that he would be a fine start to work with and break in, to fall right in lockstep with what was there. No, but the other ones had way too many things going on, didn't have enough experience. I agree with that one.
all right, good to know. And then once we, so then, that might be one person. So then, once we resubmit this, that may open other avenues.
Yeah,
So-
I'm almost done actually combining that. So
Okay.
hopefully maybe by the time we conclude, we'll have hard copies of this. But trustee, did you have anything else before?
All
Oh, no.
I would like to make a comment that is, if you offer anything to anybody, that you totally explain totally how and what you're doing with this department and where it's going and where it may end up.
Oh, I agree, yeah, we,
You're messing with their livelihood.
yeah, so at the committee, we talked a little bit about the idea that status quo generally isn't a very good idea, and that this is a unique opportunity to bring someone in at an entry level effectively, and start over. Take the best of what we have, keep it, get rid of that which we don't, that isn't functional, and redesign this thing.
Okay. Chief, is there, we went through, you were the last member of that personnel committee that went through the interviews. From your standpoint, is there agreement or disagreement with Trustee Foley's and my thought process through that?
I gotta, give me a second. Respectfully, would disagree. Like I say, under normal circumstances, we had one opening, we were hiring one person. I'm like, that's absolutely the way to do it. For me, this is unheard of, unprecedented, never experienced in my entire career situation. And I told you guys earlier, I'm a flow chart, yes, no, yes, no. And we do the flow chart that way. And I don't like gray areas, I'm black and white, and my position is I have 5 openings and I have 5 candidates. That's my simple answer. And to that end, I don't want to disregard any of the caution that's being expressed, because I do inherently agree as a chief officer of the department. As I stated the other night, though, I feel a great sense of urgency, and not to be overly dramatic, but a pretty heavy burden right now. And also would remind the board that I also stated probably 3 times over the last several meetings we had, my reasoning for offering 5 people and not 2 or 3 is because it is my sincere feeling, if I call all 5 of them tomorrow and offer contingent, I think I'll only get 2 or 3 if I'm lucky. And that's why I would like to offer 5.
So Dave, please put your mask back on, because it is actually mandated, so.
But let me understand that, because again, I don't want to put ourselves in a position where we expend a bunch of money and the person just, it's not what I was looking for, I'm out of here. These have to be qualified people. And whereas I understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree with it, because I think that the offer should be made to those people that are legit. But before we start spending a bunch of money, got to somehow qualify them to make sure that we're not hiring somebody for the wrong reason, just to fill a slot. I totally appreciate the stress level and the sense of urgency. I completely understand that. But I want to caution you, I guess, that grabbing people for the sake of grabbing people may not be the best approach. I think if we've got, of those 5, if we know, for example, that you feel comfortable with 3 of them, then we make those offers to those 3. And then if 1 or 2 of them filter out, then I guess we start over again. But I just want to spend a whole bunch of money and just find ourselves in the same position a few months later.
Yeah, Treasurer.
I think too, we need to keep in mind that we do have a job description now. We can advertise on our whatsite. You're gonna reach out to the big 4, those groups. I mean, even if, whatever we offer to, whatever it ends up being, 1 or all 5, we still have that other opportunity to maybe get some new candidates that
What
way.
if we were to put a limit on it?
And I do think that we can interview quicker. It seemed like the interview process was dragged out over a week instead of bang, bang, bang. I mean,
Do it in a couple days or a day
Right,
or
like-
whatever.
And we all know the circumstance, and respectfully disagree or not, I just don't want to, if we have from my standpoint, and from another trustee's standpoint, and I don't think you could disagree with that statement, other than the fact that you wanted just to, and I know where you're coming from, but the reality is there was one person out of that 5 that met all those criteria. And if you want to offer that person, then that would be, from my standpoint, I would vote for that. Opening up that can, because tomorrow, you're having another ad hoc committee. Special meetings, I think, are going to be forthcoming as we continue to progress down this path. I don't want to rush to the next, I mean, let's chip away. I mean, if we go towards the top tier candidate and he falls back, then is it, you know, it's the board's will. I mean, and what does that look like to everybody else? Because it's not just me.
That
I mean,
doesn't seem,
unbeknownst to a lot of people, there aren't 7 skibbies that sit at this table,
that,
but all have a say.
So I would feel comfortable with allowing him to hire 1 or 2 people. But with the understanding that we're still continuing the process going forward, that will all still continue.
oh, yeah.
But don't just close the door, I think, but if you leave some flexibility, I'm not saying go out and hire 2 people, but I'm saying, let's look at it tomorrow's meeting, let's pick out the best 1 or 2, make an offer, you may not even get them, so we may be back to, you know, ground zero again,
Yes.
but
Without like mentioning, because I don't know who this top candidate person is, but earlier in our meeting, we discussed another gentleman, this Willis, Mr. Willis, or if that's his first name, I don't know. But anyway, if that's not this other person, I mean, he was spoken highly of. Could he be one of the 2, like whoever this other top person is? And
Well,
this?
you're on the same page.
Willis is the top person.
Okay, that's what, I didn't know.
So I mean, I guess I'm redirecting this to the ad hoc, because this is a continuation.
Oh, yeah.
So,
And there's a possibility, I suppose, that one person is hired, and that person says, hey, by the way, my buddy so-and-so, or my aunt or uncle or whomever would be interested. So they tend to have a little bit of a trickle effect anyway, and so, but I do believe that we need to get moving.
I don't disagree.
And it's an ongoing process, and those 5 are not the only 5, hopefully, but can't fall off the floor, I guess. You know, so I would ask that this body at least give the ad hoc committee the authority to at least offer something to at least this one person, possibly 2.
and that's, I mean,
That seem
the rest of the
reasonable for
board,
now?
I mean, that's reasonable. I think, because this isn't gonna just be done
No.
tomorrow or with these 5 people. We
No.
just now have a very important document that we haven't had, and we didn't look at the market correctly. We were looking for ready-to-go officers.
and we'll be back in another
Yeah.
week, right?
What? We're gonna, our next regularly scheduled meeting
Tuesday.
is in like in 19 and a half hours.
Right.
So, so I mean, but if, I'm not opposed, if we have knowledge that we can act upon, I'll call a special meeting. That's a given.
Well, in the interest of that economics,
Yeah.
do we need that? Can't we make can we make a motion to move forward? Can we do that on this kind of a?
We can do it right now.
Yeah.
Yes, and just perfectly as you said, to afford, this board can make a motion to allow the ad hoc to pursue 1 candidate or up to 2 candidates, whatever it feels legitimately sound. I don't disagree. I think that to offer a position to somebody that's not at the base level that we don't want currently, it seems that we're just rushing to have a warm body. I want to have, if we're moving forward, to me, besides the warm bodies, is the structure and the integrity of the department as a whole. And that's going to be a whole series of meetings
Another
for you. Sorry, Michelle, did you want to comment?
Well, I guess I have a comment of, we interviewed these 5 people, and we say only 1 is qualified, but do the other 4 have great potential? I mean,
I think that they all had potential.
so are we discounting them?
Well,
I mean, could they, if they
well-
have good potential, why are we?
yeah, my view on
Counting them
that
out.
is, and probably poor semantics, poor choice of words. I'm just kind of sitting back, rolling this through my mind, and what I think what we've done in the last hour or two is take positions that are open for lieutenants and write a job description for something less than a lieutenant, move them down to, say, basic EMT firefighter, with the possibility of maybe making them a sergeant, and then turn around and saying, we don't want to offer these guys because they don't meet this job description, but we're hiring off of this one.
And that was my point.
Yeah.
I mean, we were interviewing for an officer position, and now we're
Right.
hiring for a
And-
firefighter
And the
position,
only,
so
and
Are those other
again,
four-
I have,
acceptable for that position.
I want you guys to remember that on a department this size, I do go in the fires a lot with these guys. I don't want you to think for a minute that I'm gonna hire one of them I don't think can drag my big butt out of that building or know what to do correct, or anything, so, when we say didn't, and I'll take ownership of that, because I'm the one that actually threw that term out there, but when I say he's the only one that met the minimum qualifications, the caveat to that is he's the only one that's qualified as a fire officer.
So did the
So
other
if
ones?
we're
get
hiring a fire
qualifications?
officer, yeah, I'm
Okay.
comfortable with offering just him, but as far as the other four go, if we're hiring a firefighter or a firefighter sergeant, then they, as the spirit of the past goes, and again, we don't have to do it just because that's the way we've always done it, but I can pop off names of our last 10 full-time firefighters, and I'm telling you, only 2 of them met the minimum requirements of fire officer when they were offered jobs here. They were hired in and then given the 2 years to meet that. So this would be, and this is just my opinion, but doing that would be saying we're cutting the cord and we're setting a new precedent here for hiring. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just be aware of that, because that's the first thing that's gonna, I described the shock absorber as chief. That's the thing that's gonna be coming up. They said, we've been hiring guys off the street for 30 years and then let them get their fire officer. Why can't we do it now when we need it the most? I understand what you're saying, Mr. Lapp, and I don't either, but we did, I do want you to remember, we had a list of 14, we whittled down to 5. So it's not like I wasn't being kind of picky.
Laura, you.
I just wondered, Lizzie, do you have any suggestions, comments on this?
So I think this is one of those difficult situations where this really is a policy and judgment call as opposed to a lawfulness issue. If you're asking my opinion, I do tend to share Trustee Lappin's view on this, which is I don't want bodies for the sake of bodies. While I certainly understand past practice concepts and why there may be some friction or maybe some shock to absorb in a normal situation, I suppose at the other end of it is the faster we have more qualified people in those roles, the quicker the responsibility, the shifts, the hours can come down theoretically. And I would hope that that's obviously continuing to be an important view for everybody, yourself included, Chief, because I know you've got to be exhausted already, and it's only the beginning. So my perspective is that the board should track its hiring to whatever it's comfortable doing, and be mindful that, yes, indeed, we are looking at potentially structuring the hiring practice in a new way, which is management's prerogative. The trick is making sure we follow whatever practice we're going to adhere to. I think there are a lot of resources available to draw people in, despite the shallow pool of fire EMT candidates I know exists. I would encourage, to the extent that this job description or additional posts are going to be shared, that we consider also offering a copy to the IFF and asking them to circulate it, because they are circulating job descriptions all the time in case individuals want to move. And the Alpena County, the Alpena Township area has a lot to offer that is different than other parts of the state. Maybe we could draw someone, maybe not, but at least it's another outlet for your posting.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Well, and to that end, I mean, we could go round and round.
Let's go,
By all
I
means,
tell you what.
make a
Let
motion
me try
as
to
a-
make this in a motion. I would make the motion that the Board of Trustees authorize or allow the ad hoc committee to allow the fire chief to interview with the potential of hiring up to 3 candidates at this point for firefighter EMT.
do we have a motion on the table? Is there support?
I'll support that,
It's been supported. Further discussion?
but we have already done the
Right.
interviews, Steve.
Well, yeah, but we still have to
Okay.
see if they're interested.
Trustee Bowling?
This will be to bring a potential person to the board to hire.
Yes, thank you for the qualification.
Not you
To-
can't hire.
Right, exactly. To bring to the Board of Trustees
A recommendation.
the recommendations of the chief and/or ad hoc committee.
Are you friendly to the amendment of the motion?
Yeah, because we're looking at having a meeting next Tuesday, right? So
Our next
Yeah.
regularly scheduled.
so if somebody accepts and we're gonna have a meeting tomorrow, we'll know tomorrow. Somebody accepts, they could be ready to be presented to the board by next Tuesday.
Okay.
So I am, yeah, totally
So
in
we
agreement.
have a motion, support. I think that's a sound way.
I just have a
Yes,
little
by all means,
discussion.
this is the point.
How many are you just gonna determine that at your meeting tomorrow? How many?
Tomorrow, we'll look at everybody and see if we got anybody
And
that's
you'll
still
say if you want
interested.
1 or 5 or whatever.
Right, we may not have any, we don't know.
Okay.
So we're not even gonna reach out to these people today to see if
No,
they're
no,
still
no, no,
interested?
no, I think we need to, no,
Okay.
no.
So we're all in agreement there. So tomorrow at the ad hoc committee, you're actually going to be taking those 5 that went through the interview process, reaching out to those individuals and making a recommendation at our next meeting of that potential.
So,
Yeah, I don't know that the ad hoc committee will do it tomorrow morning at 7:30 because people may be sleeping, but I certainly think that Chief can very easily after that meeting, make those phone calls.
Okay, copy. Is there any other discussion?
It's this is just a suggestion, but if Chief's making the phone calls, I mean, does it make sense to have one of you two, like, just to kind of?
No, I think we
No,
have,
Tag
at
team
that
it.
point in time, we have
That's
to
not
adjust
necessary.
No, I just didn't know
I'm not gonna have
if
that.
one thought of one thing, the other, you know what I mean?
I don't have enough
No.
knowledge, that's just gonna be
It was just a
they're either
suggestion.
interested or they're not.
Okay, with that being said, roll call vote, please.
Treasurer Ellery Summers?
Yes.
Trustee Kroll,
Yes.
Trustee Polly?
Yes.
Trustee Lappin?
Yes,
Clerk Palovich, yes. Supervisor Skibby?
Yes. Okay, with that business being concluded, Lizzie, I did notice that your email, I'm going to have to hand type it out unless you have it in a Word format or can kind of send it to me in Word.
I can send that to you in Word, but I would think you can select and Control C to copy it directly from and then dump it into your Word document.
Thank you for your tutelage. Thank you for your tutelage. I got it.
She even has to look that word up. No.
Thank you for your help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep it simple.
Okay. At this point in time, that concludes the purpose. Oh, yes, trustee.
No, I'd just like to ask trustee Lappin, you started out this meeting as 4 different things that you were going to go after. One was discontinue the fire department, consolidate, and run our own, and I missed the second one.
a nonprofit,
Yeah, nonprofit or for-profit.
yeah.
What's a nonprofit?
So, for example, East Grand Lake Volunteer Fire Department is a not-for-profit fire department. It, essentially, at the end of the day, we just have money available. It doesn't, we don't care. Municipality doesn't necessarily care who runs the fire department. They just need a fire department.
I think there was another one that you didn't mention about
Pardon me?
hiring services to have it taken care of.
Yeah, you know, like a for-profit fire department. They're not good examples, but they all have quirks with them. The not-for-profit is.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, I had noise up there.
Well, the not-for-profit is, it has a liability issue, as do a for-profit. No fire department has serious consequences, and so, you know, we whittled it down.
The other thing that I just would like the committee to take to mind, I've heard all these things, hiring all these people. I've not heard one point is how is this going to be financed, how it's going to be done, where the money's going to come from, where it's going to be allocated. And we got budget time coming up, and I think for the last, as long as I've been on the board, it's coming up on starting my 8th year. I still haven't seen where the budget has come in on the fire department, and we still, well, not giving it some extra funds beyond its time, or before its time. So I think that's very important. I have not heard a word.
Well, conversations to be had.
That will all be forthcoming.
Yeah, and that's why the sense of urgency, because of the budget coming up.
Because at our subsequent meeting, or, I'm sorry, at our next meeting, I will be bringing forth dates for budget sessions. Because we are at our 3/4 point, and we will be diving into that on a very routine basis moving forward. So this is an opportunity, second opportunity for public comment. If there is any public comment by the telephone, please state your name and make comment. I will repeat, if there is anybody by telephone or by those on streaming through YouTube, I think we've answered the only question that's come through online, but if there are any comments to be given by telephone, please state your name and give your comment for the minutes. Okay, with that being said, is there any further discussion by the board?
I just have one thing. It's about people who make comments on the YouTube chat. When they call, we ask for their name. When they're in person, we ask for their name. I feel like,
Thanks.
Okay.
It says it.
okay, but you didn't tell us.
Yeah.
You just said there was a comment and you read it. You didn't. So I just think we should clarify and know who's making the comment too.
I'll support that.
My apologies. Yes, Ms. Banks gave us that question of clarification of ranked versus fire officer. That was Beverly Banks of 5,000 something Misery Bay Road.
We don't need their address.
No, we don't anymore. So my apologies for that as well. Is there any other discussion to be had today?
Thank you, Lizzie.
Yes, Ms. Mills, thank you so much for your time and direction.
Does she have any comments?
Well, this is discussion for the board, but if Ms. Mills, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to all of you. Thank you so much for the privilege of working with you as always.
Okay, thank you
you.
very much. At this point in time, if there's no further discussion.
Did you have something to say?
No,
I
this
thought
is,
I thought Dave raised his hand. Sorry.
no. So if there's no other discussion, please,
So
I'll
moved.
entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion and support to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed the same. Meeting adjourned at 3:18. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'll go.
Thank you again, Lizzie.
All right, so I will,
So we need Michelle to be here in the morning, like, and you know